What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you the Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. Folks, in this week we saw numerous Black Label cards come through, more so than we usually see, and we also saw tons of PSA 10 evolutions from Prismatic evolutions hit the market. We're going to take a look at some of their auction sale prices along with a bunch of other cards, so stay tuned to the very end. I appreciate you joining me for this week's recap. Very quick shout out to today's auction recap sponsor. It is none other than lowpopping.com. Lowpopping.com is your source for high-end, modern, and vintage Pokemon cards. And the website is absolutely fine-tuned for you to search for the next big piece for your collection. They have some of the most unique items in the Pokemon TCG market for sale, and cards that range from extremely affordable all the way up to absolute grail status. And the thing that's always been my favorite feature about buying on lowpopping.com is that if you don't have the cash on hand, is that you can easily trade for the card or cards that you must have. You also have the ability to make offers on just about anything you see for sale, and they also have buy now, pay later options and worldwide shipping. So after this recap, go over to lowpopping.com. I'll put the link to the website in the description of this video. And if you pick something up, please message me on Instagram and let me know what you got. I always appreciate that. Alright, let's start off this recap with this lot of raw cards from Prismatic Evolutions. This is a God Pack of all of the SIR evolutions, along with the reverse Master Ball Eevee card. So 10 cards total, sold for $4,005. And then on to the PSA 10 copies of these cards. Here's a special illustration rare Eevee EX that sold for $810. The Flareon EX sold for $1,025. The Jolteon EX sold for $1,080. The Glaceon EX sold for $1,975. And the Sylveon EX sold for $2,025. We also saw this Eevee Black Star promo that you get from the Elite Trainer boxes. Here is the regular promo Eevee that sold as a PSA 10 for $248, while the Pokemon Center versions of this in PSA 10 sold for much higher of a price. Here's one that sold for $835, the other one for $910. Here is a reverse holo Master Ball Umbreon in PSA 10, sold for $1,025. And then we saw numerous Umbreon EX special illustration rares in PSA 10 come by. They started out at around $5,000. Here's one that sold for $4,950. But then as the week went on, they just kind of kept creeping down in value there with each ending auction. We saw a following sale for $4,600. After that, $4,250. After that, $4,000. Here's another sale for $4,000, all the way down to $3,550. So far, there have been 147 PSA 10 copies of this card graded. I'm sure by the time you watch this video, there's probably going to be more than that, but yeah. So we're starting off about $5,000 earlier this week, has come down to a little bit below $4,000. We'll continue to keep an eye on this card as we do. Here are those Black Label cards I was telling you about. Here's a Black Label Charizard V-Star from Brilliant Stars that sold for $1,676 this week. Here is a Black Label Magikarp Wailord GX from Team Up that sold for $5,350, along with this Black Label Lugia V from Silver Tempest that sold for $5,600. Here is a CGC 10 Perfect Blaziken VMAX Alt Art from Chilling Reign. Now, the CGC 10 Perfect grades have been retired for quite some time, but this copy sold for $1,569. Up next, we have a couple of cards that I just covered in the past top 10 video of cards that were booming the past week. This Gold Star Greninja has boomed even further in value since I did that video. Here's a PSA 10 that sold for $310, another one that sold for $270, along with this Stained Glass Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno Black Star promo that sold for $170 as a PSA 10. A couple more modern cards to go over. Here is a Mewtwo GX from Shining Legends, sold for $2,150, and then the Umbreon VMAX we saw come by in PSA, CGC, and BGS. The PSA 10 copy this week sold for about $2,800. However, the CGC 10 Pristine example sold for $4,050, while the BGS 10 Pristine example sold for $4,400. On to a few vintage cards from eBay. Here is a Shadowless Venusaur in PSA 10 that sold for $2,726. Here is a CGC 10 Pristine Base 2 Charizard that sold for $7,100 this week. Here is a PSA 10 First Edition Blaine's Moltres from Gym Heroes, a very coveted card in PSA 10 that sold for $3,550. Along with this First Edition Houndour Holo from Neo Discovery, a very low pop PSA 10 card that sold for $2,800. And then here is a PSA 10 Houndoom from Aquapolis that sold for $2,727. Couple of pricey birds to go over. Here is a Ho-Oh First Edition Holo from Neo Revelation, sold for $2,888. And then we saw this Rockets Articuno in PSA 10 that sold for $2,105. Here we have a binder collection of 99 vintage holos, mostly from the WotC era, but as you can see, they kind of span a few generations here of the Pokemon TCG. You got some old school EX cards here, Neo cards, yeah, all kinds of, even some reverse holo cards from Legendary Collection. So this lot sold for a total of $2,025. And what's crazy is that in the description, all of these cards are moderate to heavily played and still sold for over $2,000. Not too bad. A couple pieces of sealed product. Here is a Unified Minds booster box, sold for $1,080. And then we saw several cases come by. Here is a case of Twilight Masquerade, sold for $1,100, along with this case of Chilling Reign that sold for $2,275. Here is a case of Fusion Strike booster boxes that sold for $2,938. And then here is a case of Evolving Skies booster boxes, 6 boxes total, that sold for $8,150. And we've been seeing individual boxes of this set sell for about $1,400 as well. And then just a couple of cards from Fanatics Collect. We saw a Black Label Japanese Charizard EX from the Shiny Treasure EX set that sold for $2,310. Here is a Black Star Promo Birthday Pikachu in PSA 10 that sold for $2,880. Here is a Black Label Charizard GX from Hidden Fates that sold for $4,080. And then here we have a PSA 10 Dark Charizard Holo from Team Rocket that sold for $4,800, and that is a very healthy price for this card. And it makes one wonder, is this because that new Team Rocket set's coming out? Maybe. I don't know. But that's a good looking price for this card. Here we have a Black Label Umbreon V from Evolving Skies that sold for $6,600. Not the VMAX, Umbreon V. And then the final auction in today's video was for this Shadowless BGS 9.5 base set Charizard that sold for $10,500. There you have it, folks. There are the auctions of the week. There weren't a whole lot that came by this week. A lot of the other auction houses were kind of lacking quite a bit. So hopefully next week I got a bit more for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. That's all I got. I'll catch you in my next one.